Welcome to this episode of the Erasing Shame podcast. I'm your co-host, DJ Chuang, and I'm sitting here with Prasanta Verma, the author of a brand new book, Beyond Ethnic Loneliness, The Pain of Marginalization, and the Path to Belonging. Thank you for joining us, Prasanta.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
I'm so happy to have read your book and endorsed it, and we're going to talk about it in just a few minutes, but let's check in with you, see how you're doing. How is life in Milwaukee, Wisconsin for you?
Well, thank you so much, DJ, first of all, for your wonderful endorsement. I was honored to have you read and that you endorsed my book. So thank you so much for that. And here in Milwaukee, it's great right now because we are transitioning from winter to spring, and where winter feels like it's most of the year. So right now, there are beautiful things starting to bloom, and green is coming back in the landscape, and I absolutely love it. So I am so happy that's happening right now in this season. So this is a great time to ask me that question.
Super. I'm so happy you get to experience all four seasons. I live in Southern California. I've been here 16 years now, and I lose a track of time because it's typically sunny around 70s here, but we've had some rainy seasons recently. And I'm starting to get healthy again, recovering from some illness. So glad to have a conversation with you. I know you are very busy promoting your book, doing the book tour kind of thing, and I'm sure that comes with a lot of effort after writing the book as well. And so we're just going to have a casual conversation like we're having some chai tea,
Sounds good.
and people are listening in.
I got my
Now,
chai right here.
fantastic. Now, I did a quick word search on the manuscript that I had, and you mentioned the word shame 7 times in the book, and most of
Mm,
the times you quoted other people, which is
mm.
fine. But you're a voracious writer. You've been writing for years, blogging and noting articles. One particular article from 2021, Sojourner, titled "Churches Should Help Normalize Mental Health for Asian Americans." And that was such a poignant article. And it helped me in my own journey towards being a mental health advocate, as well as now we are encouraging Christian Asian mental health on this podcast in season 7. And I wanted to just explore with you, what does shame look and feel like for someone in a South Asian family and culture?
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for that question, DJ, and for pointing out that I didn't know that about my book because I hadn't actually specifically searched that word, but thank you. I really appreciate that. That's insightful. So what does shame feel like for a South Asian person or South Asian woman in particular? I think for me, it felt like I was embarrassed of my identity growing up. I was in a small town in the South, and there was nobody who looked like me except for my family, my siblings. And I wanted to look like everyone else. And so I was ashamed. And I'm ashamed to say that, actually, to be honest, I was ashamed of my background. I didn't want to be from India. So that was some of my early feelings of shame were that I felt this um, embarrassment regarding my ethnic identity and cultural identity. I think another way that I personally felt shame was regarding standards of beauty that I experienced while growing up. And so in the South, where I grew up, beauty pageants were a big thing, and it's just part of the culture. I live in the Midwest now, and it's different here, but I just wasn't invited to be part of these beauty pageants. And so I always felt like is there something wrong with me? This sense of shame of not maybe I felt inadequate or I wasn't pretty enough. Those kinds of feelings also embedded into me at that age. Um, and so also just embarrassment over my identity, and shame. So those were some of my early experiences with that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I know it's
Yeah.
a painful thing to share, and that's what comes with shame.
Mhm.
And while pain is right there in the title of your book as well, I believe you grew up in the state of Alabama. Is that right?
That's right, in Alabama.
Yeah, and I grew up in a small town in Virginia,
Oh, you did?
Winchester, and
Okay.
20,000 people, and we were the only of five Asian families there. So it was, I can definitely relate to being marginalized and wanting to fit in. And sad to say, shamefully, I had disdain and dislike for my own family because they didn't speak English and we lived such different lives
Mm-hmm.
than my friends. And I couldn't do sleepovers and things like that.
Same here. Couldn't do sleepovers, and yeah, some similarities there.
So I can definitely relate. And
Yeah.
then you really do a great job in your book, sharing your own personal story. So I could definitely feel that viscerally and relate. And then you also back that up with a ton of research. And one of the things you delve into is the shame of domestic violence, which is even harder to talk about than just our personal shame. And I'm hoping you have not experienced that
Mm-hmm.
yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you've
Yeah.
perhaps talked to others who have.
Yeah, I the reason I wanted to put that in the book is because when I was talking about ethnic minorities and in particular women, I really, the book, I couldn't delve deeply into a lot of topics, but I wanted to mention it because for especially Asian American women, but really ethnic minorities and women, um, there's a particular shame with domestic violence. And in our cultures that we come from, there's a shame associated with that. We don't talk about it openly. In India, especially, so in traditional society, if when you get married in traditional Indian culture, you actually leave your own family, you join your husband's family. And in some families, if this is going on, you are not allowed to come back. I mean, you've left, in a sense. And so there's stigma attached to it. There's shame, of course. There's financial instability. There are so many reasons why women feel stuck in these kinds of situations. So I really wanted to mention that and just make us aware that for especially minority women, they may really have a more difficult uh, ability to get out of the situations they're in just because of their circumstances, their societal pressures, community values that they're part of, financially unable to leave their situation. So that's why I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, and I think we should take a moment to um, speak towards that because some of the listeners and viewers of this podcast may be in a situation where they're experiencing domestic violence. And sometimes it may just be emotional, but sometimes it may also be physical. So, what can someone do who's an Asian American
Mm-hmm.
woman, wife, spouse that's stuck in that situation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question, DJ. So, one of the things that I noticed when I was just growing up as an Indian immigrant, I we would occasionally, because my parents are Hindu, or I had a friend who had an event at a Hindu temple, so I would occasionally go to support them, and I saw on the walls, there would be these signs that say, "Are you, is he hurting you, or do you feel stuck, or call Didi," which means sister, call sister, and there was this phone number. So I would say call there's a hotlines you can call. There are websites that you can look up, and some of them have safety features attached to the websites where you can just click if somebody like walks into the room suddenly, you can click this panic button and it'll close automatically all the tabs that you're looking at that website. So, or maybe just close the website. So I think, first of all, I think finding someone that you can trust and just I know that it's hard to break that stigma. I think in families where, especially where there are the values in Asian American families where we don't talk about things. There's this sense of we think we can push through them. I don't know if that's the same in your culture, DJ, but I think in some of the Asian cultures I've encountered, there's that feeling of let's just get over it. It's our problem. We don't want to advertise this to society. So, but I think it's important to find someone that's trustworthy to share and talk to and make sure you're safe. Number one, make sure you're safe. Don't stay in an unsafe situation. Um, Consider looking into the shelters in your area and finding a safe place to go,
Hmm.
having a safety plan. Um, that would involve maybe starting to save a little money, packing a bag, having it ready. It just kind of depends on the individual situation of what they need to do. But I would highly recommend trusting someone um, that to share your situation with, and don't go through it alone because you're not
Hmm.
alone. You're
Hmm.
not alone.
Yeah, it can be such a stifling, shameful thing to experience that. When that's one of the strangest thing about abuse, that you feel shame for someone else hurting you.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And I'll make it a part of my homework as I put together the show notes for this episode at erasingshame.com to put some of those hotlines and
Mm,
help resources available, especially in Asian languages, because sometimes the person being abused is not proficient in English, so it's really hard to navigate those resources. So I'll do
right.
my best to make that available. So thanks for speaking to that. And I hope your voice is inviting to people to get help.
I hope so. And there's no shame in that.
Amen. Now, there's a couple passages I wanted to read from the book and get your
Okay.
response to that because I found them so meaningful. Now, when we are experiencing shame, one of the best way out is to share our stories. And you dedicate a whole chapter about the value of storytelling. And it's been amazing as I learn about neuroscience and who we are as people, that storytelling is not just primal, it's actually a way that brings healing to our brains and our mental health. And you write in your book, for those of you who have found it difficult to find a group with a similar background, I can empathize. I didn't have anyone to talk about growing up as an Indian Desi, which is people from the Indian subcontinent who live in other countries for years. But it
Mm,
doesn't have to be this way.
right. Yes. Yeah.
Say more about that.
So it doesn't have to be this way for you because nowadays I think we have much more available to us now it in terms of technology, in terms of finding people, in terms of finding like-minded groups. So and plus there are just more people. There are more people, more people have come. When I was a kid, there were not as many um people from South Asia, especially in Alabama. There were in other big cities, but not where I lived. But that's changing now. So people are more spread out. They're migrating to other parts of the country, to smaller towns, and it doesn't have to be that way for us because I think as parents, our parents went through the pains of assimilation. But for us, we have a different option. We can be more integrated as opposed to assimilated, and we can bring our identities and not have to hide and not have to leave that behind. We can be both. So we can be ourselves as well as part of the larger communities that we're part of. And so storytelling is one of the ways I think that we heal, like you mentioned. It's one of the ways that we grow in empathy for each other. And it's some way that it just pierces the heart like nothing else can. A story
Mhm.
can change us and it can change the room. So it's powerful.
Very, very much. And oftentimes we're in a social settings where we just have small talk. What's a good setting for us to cultivate a storytelling environment? Certainly
Mm,
chai tea.
Yeah, chai tea is all chai is always it's chai. Chai is always a great way to start, inviting someone over for chai, just having coffee,
Mm,
yeah, going for a walk and
mm,
just spending time together, sharing your lives, small groups. There's so
mm,
many ways that we can do it. I think we have to just be intentional and we have to be curious
mm,
um, about one another. But I think because we're so busy and if we're not intentional, I think that it can definitely get pushed to the back burner. But so I think making it an intentional part of our lives to get together and talk and share our stories.
great. Thank you. Yeah, getting past that small talk, it
Yes.
sometimes feels like it's a huge leap of faith, but it's such a great step of faith because you experience so much life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then one last quote. This is towards the end of your book. We are each on our own journeys of living and healing in spaces that either affirm or do not affirm our presence. I encourage you to find ways to live and share in community with your close circle and with God. Validate you as a person of color with an experience that is valuable and worthy. You do not have to hide.
Mm, yes. Thank you. You do not have to hide. And for so long, I was hiding. For so long, I was hiding my identity, myself. But we do not have to hide. God created us to be who we are, and in our ethnic identity, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a good thing. And we can find that community even if like our external environment maybe doesn't validate or affirm that. We can create that community around us and find that safe community and have a safe place to land.
Was there something pivotal in your life that helped you come out of hiding?
Mm. I think there were several things that happened, DJ, and I'll be very brief. One of them was reading stories, and one of them I mentioned in the book. I discovered Jhumpa Lahiri's books some years ago, and I started reading her stories because I had not until that time read another person from South Asia who had written stories like that. Her stories were about immigrants, but it wasn't about stereotypes or caricatures. It was real life, and she wrote with such keen observation, and that was huge for me because I could see myself represented in a way I hadn't seen before. So that was pivotal for me. I think another thing, DJ, that happened to me was um, this happened in 2016 with everything happening politically and then George Floyd and all of that going on, the things that happened after that. And then since then, with the pandemic, I think that that actually sent me on this journey of actually naming what I had hidden, what I had before thought was shameful, because I was still processing all of that. I was still, working. Some of it I just kind of stuffed away, but I felt that I needed to really heal from all that, and not just heal, not just accept, but celebrate. So it's not just an acceptance of who I am, but it's also a celebration. And so those were some pivotal moments for me in my life.
Well, thank you so much from sharing your life personally and your stories and your research. Your book is such a valuable resource and helps us to open ourselves up to more of the quality of life that we can have in God and in our faith communities. So, as we close, how has the book tour been going for you, and how many more weeks or months do you have to put this effort out?
Well, I think it's been going fabulous, and probably a couple more events, the next couple of weeks, things happening, but I don't really know. I think at some sense you don't ever stop, but in another sense, some of this is going to die down, right? It'll just start to trickle down a little bit. So, um, I thank you so much for your support, and I really hope and pray that this is a resource that helps people to reclaim their identities and find peace and purpose and hope.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much, Prasanta, for great conversation. Encourage you to check out her book, Beyond Ethnic Loneliness, The Pain of Marginalization and the Path to Belonging. Thank you for encouraging all of us to experiencing more belonging and being a blessing to others.
Thank you so much for having me, DJ.
Okay, thank you everyone for listening and watching this episode of the Erasing Shame podcast. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Erasing Shame podcast. Get this episode's show notes at our website, erasingshame.com. Subscribe to the Erasing Shame podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or any podcast app. And please add a rating and review so that we can reach more people with our message of hope and healing.